Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gents, time to start looking at the barrels. Where's the other one gone? There he is down there, of the Honda VF750F upper crankcase. You can see they are just a tad, well, they've got some surface attachments there that we need to just clean off. So I'm going to get a little bit of Scotch-Brite. I'm not going to hone these. I've no idea whether these barrels are going to be any good. These are the replacement cases, and we're just putting the engine back together now. So just remember, I took it apart because I had low compression on the number 2 cylinder, and that was pretty much just a head gasket issue, I think. And yeah, it wasn't just compression, it was moisture, coolant getting into the crankcase, I think across the head. Anyway, so all I can do is clean these up and start getting them back together. So I've put a couple of other components in already, shift drum, output shaft, etc. Now it's time to start fitting the pistons and the crank assembly, which we need to do first before we do the last few bits before we put these back together. So I'm going to get some WD-40, bit of Scotch-Brite, and I'm going to give these a bit of a clean up, and then we can put the pistons in. Just needs a very, very light clean off, really. Nothing in here that's too problematic. I could do with a rotating brush, really, but I haven't got one of the right size. This should be more than enough to sort it out. Just using WD-40 rather than anything else, because it'll give it a bit of an oiling, won't do it any harm. Already looking a million times better, so I'm just going to give that a wipe out and bring out any material that we've loosened off. That's a lot better. I'll get the others done now. You can see how that started looking. This is the number 2 cylinder, of course. It's not the original number 2 cylinder, so no way of really telling exactly what my compression issue was, but I'm going to go with cylinder head gasket. It looked pretty poor when we took it all apart. You'd have to check out all the previous videos. Anyway, I'm going to get these other 3 cylinders cleaned out a little, and then we'll get the pistons in. This is kind of going in a completely wrong direction in terms of putting honing marks in, but a very light wipe over with a Scotch-Brite, I mean very light, is not going to be altering the dimensions, removing any material, or putting any vertical grooving or anything like that into the cylinder, so don't worry about it. What is really good about these barrels compared to the original cases is that I don't have any kind of ridge mark at the very top of the barrel. I did have on the old ones, which I feel would have needed machining out. So I think these are in pretty good nick. Okay, last one to do. Probably a bit dark to see in here, but we can have a bit of a close-up view once they're done. It's only taking a few minutes. They're not going to look perfect, like freshly honed barrels, but they're going to be in reasonably good shape. Okay, we're looking on the underside of the number 1 cylinder here, so you can see there is actually still quite a bit of honing mark in there, so they've cleaned up nicely and they're looking pretty good. So we're just going to get the pistons in and then we can start looking at the crank. This is just looking again from the underside of the number 3. It's not looking too bad. Okay, so the pistons need to go in from the top, so I'm going to flip this over. And it's not the case with all motorcycle engines. Sometimes the crank needs to be assembled with the rods and pistons into the lower case, and then you need to lower the barrels down, which means you need a special type of ring compressor. But because the barrels come down in from the top, you can just use one of these regular old ones. So if you had to lower the barrels down, this would be too wide, so this wouldn't be any good, but it will work in this instance. Might not be big enough, it should be big enough, but either way I do have another set. Check these out. And you just pick the nearest ring to the size of your pistons. In our case, our pistons are 70mm. I don't think these are marked up in any way. And then you just use the pliers that the kit comes with. So the pistons I've kept assembled with the caps on, etc. So everything's in the right orientation. Labelled them all up so I know which one's which, where they go back. You can see they do have a little bit of carbon on the crown still, so I'm just going to clean them off before I put them back. But they're all in pretty good shape. The actual crank pin bearings are all fine. I didn't have any issues, of course, with any of these, so I'm just going to put them back as is. So they clean up pretty good. Okay, so we are on the number 3 cylinder and piston. I'm just going to drop that down. And you can obviously spin this around if you go in the wrong way. Just of course make sure the intake marks are on the inside of the V, because that's where your intake is. If you have pistons that don't have these marks, really look for the reliefs that are the smallest, but I have to say they look pretty similar. In fact, these are shallower on the intake. Normally on the exhaust they're shallower, smaller, because exhaust valves tend to be smaller. But anyway, what we'll do is we'll find the most appropriately fitting ring. Won't be that one. Let's go for this one. We'll do it. So you can just see the bottom of the rod there through the number 4 cylinder. So we've got some clearance to knock it down and through. Just make sure it's not sitting on top of any of the rings. Well, it was really just a very short video of me cleaning and installing the pistons, making sure you get them in the right bore and in the right orientation. So next video I am going to flip this over and install the crank and look at the journal bearings, etc. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I will see you next time.